The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tune as Marcus Chen pushed his cart down the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower. At 2:47 a.m., the gleaming headquarters of Blackstone Industries stood empty except for the security guards downstairs, and one tired janitor who'd been cleaning these halls for 3 years. Marcus moved with practiced efficiency, his rubber-soled shoes silent against the marble floors. He'd perfected the art of invisibility. Executives walked past him during the day as if he were part of the furniture. Tonight, that invisibility would change everything. The corner office door stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the figlen. Darkened hallway, Marcus frowned. CEO Jonathan Blackstone never worked this late, and his secretary Mrs. Henderson always ensured the office was locked tight before leaving. As Marcus approached with his vacuum cleaner, voices drifted through the crack in the door. He recognized Blackstone's commanding baritone immediately, but the second voice was unfamiliar, gravelly, with a slight accent he couldn't place. "The senator's been asking questions," the stranger said, "about the Malaysia project." Marcus froze, his hand hovering over the vacuum's power switch. He should announce himself, ask if they need anything, then leave. Instead, something in the stranger's tone, cold, threatening, made him stay perfectly still. "Senator Morrison can ask all the questions he wants," Blackstone replied, his voice carrying the same arrogance Marcus heard during company meetings. "He won't find anything. The books are clean." "Clean?" The stranger laughed, a sound like grinding glass. $40 million in missing humanitarian aid doesn't stay hidden forever, especially when people start dying. Marcus's blood turned to ice. He pressed himself against the wall, his cart forgotten. "Those people were going to die anyway," Blackstone said dismissively. "Malaria, starvation, civil war, take your pick. At least this way, their suffering serves a purpose." "Your purpose, you mean? Your Swiss accounts?" Through the crack, Marcus could see Blackstone's silhouette behind his massive desk, fingers steepled. The stranger remained in shadow, but Marcus caught a glimpse of expensive shoes and what looked like a gun holster beneath a tailored jacket. "Viktor, we've been through this," Blackstone continued. "The aid convoy was attacked by rebels. Tragic, but these things happen in war zones. The money was lost, along with the medical supplies. The investigation concluded it was an unfortunate casualty of conflict. Except we both know you staged the attack," Viktor said. "Hire local militias to hit your own convoy. 40 million in aid money becomes 40 million in private profit." Marcus gripped the handle of his cart so tightly his knuckles went white. A humanitarian aid convoy attacked deliberately. People died so this man could steal money meant to save lives. "The beauty of working in failed states," Blackstone mused, "is that paperwork gets lost, witnesses disappear, and investigators can be discouraged. No one cares about a few dead Africans when there's oil to be found in contracts to be signed." "Senator Morrison cares," Viktor pressed. "He's been asking about discrepancies in the aid allocation. Wants to know why certain funds never reached their destination." Blackstone's chair creaked as he leaned back. "Then Senator Morrison needs to be reminded about his own vulnerabilities. That gambling problem he thinks no one knows about. The debts to some very unsavory people in Atlantic City. You want me to approach him? I want you to educate him. Make it clear that some questions are healthier left unasked." Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead, despite the building's aggressive air conditioning. He was listening to a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government. A conspiracy built on stolen aid money and dead civilians. "What about the journalist?" Viktor asked. "Sarah Chen, she's been sniffing around the Malaysia story." Marcus's heart stopped. Sarah Chen, his sister. The investigative reporter from the Washington Herald? Blackstone's voice carried a note of mild annoyance. "What has she found? Too much." She's been interviewing survivors, cross-referencing aid shipment records, getting close to connecting the dots. Then perhaps it's time Ms. Chen learned the same lesson as Senator Morrison. Some stories are too dangerous to tell. The threat against his sister hit Marcus like a physical blow. Sarah had been working on something big for months, staying late at the Herald offices, taking calls at all hours. She'd mentioned Malaysia once and said she was investigating aid money that had gone missing. "I'll handle the reporter," Viktor said. "Car accident, maybe. Or a robbery gone wrong. DC can be such a dangerous city." "No," Blackstone said sharply. "Nothing that obvious. We can't afford attention right now, not with Morrison already asking questions. Find another way to discourage her research." "What do you suggest?" "Be creative, but Viktor, make sure it's permanent. I won't have some idealistic journalist destroying everything I've built." Marcus backed away from the door, his mind reeling. He had to warn Sarah, had to get her away from whatever these men were planning. But who would believe him? A janitor accusing one of the city's most powerful CEOs of murder and theft? As he retreated down the hallway, Viktor's voice carried one final exchange. "What about the evidence? The real records of the convoy attack? Safe in my personal vault. Insurance, you might say. As long as those documents exist, certain parties will ensure this story never sees daylight." Marcus reached the elevator, his hands shaking as he pressed the call button. The numbers above the doors crawled upward with agonizing slowness. 42nd floor, 41st, 40th ... The elevator doors opened with a soft chime that sounded like thunder in the silence. Marcus shoved his cart inside and jabbed the button for the parking garage. As the doors closed, he caught a glimpse of Viktor emerging from Blackstone's office, a tall man with silver hair and cold eyes that seemed to look right through him. The elevator descended, and with each floor, Marcus felt the weight of what he'd heard settling on his shoulders: stolen aid money, murdered civilians, threats against a senator and his sister, evidence locked away in Blackstone's vault. By the time the elevator reached the parking garage, Marcus Chen had made a decision that would change his life forever. He was going to stop Jonathan Blackstone. He just had to figure out how. Marcus sat in his beat-up Honda Civic in the Meridian Tower parking garage, staring at his phone. His hands trembled as he scrolled through his contacts to find Sarah's number. 3:15 a.m. She'd be asleep, but this couldn't wait. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "Marcus?" Sarah's voice was thick with sleep, but immediately alert. 3 years of investigative journalism had trained her to recognize urgent calls. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "Sarah, listen to me carefully. You need to stop whatever you're working out about Malaysia. Drop the story." Silence. Then, "What are you talking about? How do you even know about?" "I can't explain right now, but you're in danger. Real danger. Pack a bag and go somewhere safe. Maybe visit Mom and Dad in Portland." "Marcus, you're scaring me. Where are you? What's going on?" He closed his eyes, seeing Viktor's cold stare again. "I overheard something at work. A conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. They know about your investigation, Sarah. They know you're getting close to something big." "Who's they?" Marcus hesitated. If he told her about Blackstone, she'd want to investigate further. That would put her in even more danger. "I can't say over the phone. Just trust me. Drop the story and disappear for a while." "You know I can't do that." Sarah's voice had shifted to her reporter tone, sharp, focused. "If someone's threatening me over this story, it means I'm onto something important. Something they don't want exposed. Something worth killing for," Marcus said quietly. Another silence, longer this time. When Sarah spoke again, her voice was smaller, more vulnerable. "You really think they'd—" "I heard them planning it, Sarah. They're going to make it look like an accident. Then I need protection." I'll call my editor, maybe contact the police. No. Marcus's voice echoed in the concrete garage. You don't understand how powerful these people are. They mention having leverage over Senator Morrison. If they can threaten a U.S. senator, what do you think they'll do to local cops? Then what do you suggest? I can't just run and hide forever. Marcus stared through his windshield at the concrete wall, thinking furiously. Give me 48 hours. I'm going to get proof of what they're planning. Real evidence that we can take to the FBI or the press. Marcus, if these people are as dangerous as you say, then you're the one who needs to disappear. Let me handle this. It's what I do. It's my fault you're in danger, he said. They wouldn't know about your investigation if you weren't my sister. Your name, our name, it's too much of a coincidence. Sarah was quiet for a moment. What aren't you telling me? Marcus closed his eyes. He'd always been terrible at lying to his sister. I work at Blackstone Industries. I clean the offices, including the CEO's. Jesus, Marcus. You overheard Jonathan Blackstone? Promise me you'll lay low for 48 hours. Don't go to the Herald offices. Don't meet with any sources. Don't do anything that might put you on their radar. Where are you going to get this evidence? Marcus looked up at the tower looming above him, its upper floors lost in the darkness. Blackstone mentioned keeping documents in his personal vault. Proof of what really happened to that aid convoy. You're talking about breaking into one of the most secure buildings in the city. Marcus, that's insane. Maybe, but it's the only way to stop them. He paused, then added softly, I've been invisible for 3 years, Sarah. Walking through there. Offices like a ghost. Maybe it's time to use that. There has to be another way. 48 hours, Marcus interrupted. Promise me. Sarah sighed, and he could picture her running her hands through her dark hair, the way she did when she was stressed. 48 hours. But Marcus, if you get yourself killed over this ... I won't. I love you, Sarah. I love you too. Be careful. Marcus ended the call and sat in the silence of the parking garage. Above him, the Meridian Tower stretched into the night sky, its windows dark except for the occasional security light. Somewhere in that building was evidence that could expose Blackstone's crimes and save his sister's life. He started the Honda and drove home through empty streets, his mind already working on the problem. How do you break into a building you know better than anyone else? How do you steal from a vault when you're just a janitor with a high school diploma and 3 years of night shift experience? By the time Marcus reached his small apartment in Alexandria, the beginnings of a plan were taking shape. It would require everything he'd learned about the building's security systems, the guards' routines, and the blind spots in their surveillance. It would require skills he didn't have and risks he'd never taken. But as he thought about Viktor's cold promise to handle his sister, Marcus knew he had no choice. In 48 hours he would either be a hero or a dead man. He preferred heroes. Marcus didn't sleep. Instead, he spread everything he knew about Meridian Tower across his kitchen table, like a general planning a military campaign. Napkins became floor plans, sketched from memory. Coffee cups marked guard positions. A salt shaker represented Blackstone's office on the 42nd floor. The building had 3 main security layers: the lobby guards, the electronic key card system, and the cameras. Marcus had advantages with all 3. He knew the guards' routines, had observed their blind spots during 3 years of late-night cleaning. The key card system recognized his janitor's badge for most floors, though executive levels required additional clearance. The cameras were his biggest challenge and his greatest asset. He knew where they were, but they also provided a record of his presence. By 6 a.m., Marcus had the skeleton of a plan. By 8 a.m., after 2 trips to different electronics stores, he had the tools he'd need. By noon, he was exhausted but ready for the most dangerous night of his life. The first step was reconnaissance. Marcus arrived for his shift at 11 p.m. as usual. But instead of starting his cleaning route, he made careful observations. The night security team consisted of 3 guards: Rodriguez at the front desk, Patterson on roving patrol, and Jackson monitoring the security office. Marcus had worked alongside them for years, sharing coffee and small talk during long nights. Tonight, that familiarity would either save him or damn him. "Evening, Marcus," Rodriguez called as he badged in through the lobby turnstiles. "Another exciting night of trash cans and vacuum cleaners?" "Living the dream," Marcus replied with his usual smile, hoping his nervousness didn't show. "Coffee's going to be extra strong tonight." He went through his normal routine for the first 2 hours, cleaning the lower floors and establishing his regular pattern. At 1:15 a.m., Patterson made his hourly rounds of the executive floors. At 1:45 a.m., Jackson left the security office for his break, locking the door behind him, but leaving the monitoring station unmanned for exactly 12 minutes. Marcus had timed this routine dozens of times, without realizing he was preparing for tonight. At 2:30 a.m., he made his move. The service elevator required his maintenance keycard, one of the few benefits of being trusted with building upkeep. Marcus rode to the 38th floor, 4 levels below Blackstone's office, and stepped into the darkened hallway. Here, away from the public areas, the cameras were fewer and farther between. From his cart, Marcus pulled out the first of his electronic store purchases, a small device he built following YouTube tutorials that afternoon. The signal jammer would create a 12-foot dead zone around him, causing security cameras to show static instead of his image. It wasn't sophisticated, but it didn't need to be. The night shift guards weren't expecting trouble, and a brief camera malfunction would likely be dismissed as a technical glitch. Marcus activated the jammer and felt his heart racing as he watched the nearest camera's red recording light flicker and go dark. The device worked. Now came the hard part. The executive elevator bank required a special keycard, something Marcus's janitor credentials couldn't access. But Marcus had learned something during his years of cleaning. Rich people were surprisingly careless with security when they thought no one was watching. 6 months ago, he'd found Jonathan Blackstone's backup keycard in the pocket of a suit jacket hanging in the executive dry cleaning area. Instead of returning it immediately, Marcus had made a decision that seemed paranoid at the time but proved prescient now. He'd taken photos of both sides of the card and researched how to clone RFID badges. The cloned card, created that afternoon with another electronic store purchase, felt impossibly light in Marcus's sweating palm. He held it against the elevator reader and heard the soft beep of acceptance. The executive elevator rose silently to the 42nd floor. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. The 42nd floor at 2:45 a.m. was a tomb of shadows and silence. Marcus emerged from the elevator with his signal jammer active, the device's soft hum barely audible over his thundering heartbeat. Blackstone's corner office lay at the end of a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the sleeping city. Marcus had cleaned this office hundreds of times, but he'd never paid attention to the details that mattered now. Where was the vault? Blackstone had mentioned personal documents, which meant private storage separate from the company safes downstairs. The office door was locked, but Marcus had another tool for that problem: the lock-picking set from his third electronics store. Visit felt clumsy in his hands, but YouTube had been an excellent teacher. After 5 agonizing minutes that felt like hours, the lock clicked open. Blackstone's office was exactly as Marcus remembered: imposing desk, leather furniture, and walls lined with awards and photographs showing the CEO with various world leaders. But now Marcus looked with different eyes, searching for concealment. Behind Blackstone's desk, a bookshelf covered most of the wall. Marcus approached it carefully, running his hands along the spines of leather-bound volumes. Most were business texts and biographies, but one section felt different. The books were lighter, decorative rather than functional. Marcus pulled on Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations and felt it give way with a soft click. The bookshelf swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a space beyond. The vault was smaller than Marcus had expected, a walk-in closet lined with filing cabinets and a wall-mounted safe. The safe itself was beyond his abilities, but the filing cabinets were secured with simple locks that yielded to his newfound lockpicking skills. The first cabinet contained financial documents, legitimate business records, tax filings, contracts. The second held personal papers, property deeds, insurance policies, family documents. But the third cabinet, locked with a more sophisticated mechanism, held what Marcus was looking for. The Malaysia files were comprehensive and damning. Spreadsheets showed the real allocation of humanitarian aid money, with $40 million redirected to numbered accounts in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. Emails detailed coordination with local militia groups, payments for staged attacks on aid convoys. Most horrifying were the casualty reports, detailed accounts of the civilians killed in the attacks Blackstone had orchestrated. Marcus photographed everything with his phone, his hands shaking as he documented each piece of evidence. But as he worked, a thought nagged at him. This was almost too easy. Blackstone was paranoid enough to have a hidden vault, but careless enough to leave the most damaging evidence in unlocked filing cabinets. The answer came as Marcus reached the bottom of the third cabinet. A single folder, marked Insurance, contained documents that made his blood run cold. The folder held detailed dossiers on Senator Morrison, Sarah, and a dozen other people who had gotten too close to the Malaysia story. Photos, addresses, daily routines, family members. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the final document in the folder. A surveillance report on Marcus himself. Subject: Marcus Chen, 32. Janitor at Meridian Tower. Brother to investigative journalist Sarah Chen. Known to work late shifts. Access to executive floors for cleaning duties. Potential security risk given family connection to ongoing investigation. Recommendation: monitor closely. If the subject becomes aware of Operation Crossroads, recommend immediate termination to prevent compromise. Status: under surveillance as of today's date. Marcus stared at the document, his mind reeling. They knew. They'd been watching him. Probably for weeks, which meant working late tonight, Marcus. Marcus spun around to find Viktor standing in the vault entrance, his cold eyes reflecting the light from Marcus's phone. The man was even more intimidating up close, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of stillness that suggested violence held in check. I have to admit, Viktor continued, stepping into the vault and effectively blocking Marcus's only exit. When we saw you on the security cameras, we thought it might be a coincidence. A janitor working late, perhaps behind on his schedule. Marcus tried to speak but found his throat dry as sand. But then you went straight to the vault, Viktor said. No cleaning supplies, no maintenance work. Just straight to the files that could destroy Mr. Blackstone's empire. That's not the behavior of an innocent man. You were just trying to save your sister, Viktor finished. Admirable, really. Family loyalty is a rare commodity these days. Viktor reached into his jacket, and Marcus tensed, expecting to see a gun. Instead, the man pulled out a phone and showed Marcus the screen. It was a live video feed from what looked like an apartment building hallway. Sarah's building, Viktor explained conversationally. She's been home all evening, probably taking your advice about laying low. My colleague is positioned outside her door. One phone call from me, and she becomes another tragic victim of urban crime. Marcus felt the walls of the vault closing in around him. What do you want? From you? Nothing, actually. You've already given us what we needed. Viktor gestured to the scattered files. Evidence that you were here, that you accessed confidential documents, that you're involved in corporate espionage. Corporate espionage? Oh yes, when the security footage is reviewed, it will show a disgruntled employee breaking into his boss's private files, probably planning to sell trade secrets to competitors. Very sad story, really. The stress of the discovery led to a complete breakdown. Viktor's smile was colder than winter. People in that state of mind sometimes do drastic things. Jump from tall buildings, for instance. Marcus understood with crystal clarity that he was about to die. Viktor would throw him from the 42nd floor window, and it would look like suicide. The security footage would show Marcus breaking into the vault, providing a motive for his guilt-driven leap. But there was one thing Viktor didn't know. Marcus still had the signal jammer running. For the past 20 minutes, every camera in the vicinity had been showing static instead of Marcus's activities. The security guards downstairs would have no record of him entering the vault, no evidence of him accessing the files. "There's just one problem with your plan," Marcus said. Surprised by how steady his voice sounded, Viktor raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" Marcus held up the small device. "No cameras means no footage. No footage means no evidence I was ever here." For the first time, Viktor's confidence wavered. His eyes flicked to the jammer, then to the cameras that should have been recording. Marcus used that moment of confusion to act. He dove forward, not toward the blocked exit, but toward the filing cabinet behind Viktor. His hand found the heavy marble bookend Blackstone, kept on top of the files, a solid piece of stone, the size of a softball. Viktor recovered quickly, reaching for his gun, but Marcus was already moving. The bookend caught Viktor in the temple. With a sickening crack, and the larger man stumbled backward. Marcus didn't wait to see how badly he'd hurt him. He bolted for the exit, leaping over Viktor's groaning form and racing through Blackstone's office toward the elevator behind him. He heard Viktor cursing in what sounded like Russian, followed by the metallic sound of a gun being drawn. Marcus reached the elevator and jabbed the call button repeatedly, as if his urgency could make it arrive faster. The hallway behind him remained too silent. When the elevator doors opened, Marcus dove inside and immediately pressed the button for the parking garage. As the doors closed, he caught a glimpse of Viktor appearing in the hallway, gun in hand, blood streaming down his face. The elevator descended, and Marcus allowed himself one moment of relief. He was alive. He had the evidence. Sarah was still safe, but as the floors ticked by 39, 38, 30-7, Marcus realized his problems were just beginning. Viktor knew who he was. Blackstone's organization had been watching him for weeks, and now he'd assaulted one of their operatives while stealing their most sensitive documents. Marcus Chen, invisible janitor, had just declared war on one of the most powerful men in the country. The elevator reached the parking garage, and Marcus stepped out into a world that had changed forever. Marcus's hands shook as he fumbled with his car keys in the parking garage. Every shadow looked like Viktor, every sound like approaching footsteps. He finally got the Honda started and peeled out toward the exit, his phone already dialing Sarah's number. "Marcus, thank God. I was starting to worry. Sarah, listen carefully. Get out of your apartment right now. Don't pack anything. Don't take time to think about it. Just leave. What happened? Did you get the evidence?" "I got it, but they were waiting for me. They know who I am. They know where you live. There's someone watching your building." As if summoned by his words, Marcus saw headlights in his rearview mirror. A black SUV had emerged from the tower's parking structure and was following him at a steady distance. "Marcus, you're scaring me." "Good. Scared keeps you alive." Marcus took a hard right onto Massachusetts Avenue, checking his mirror. The SUV followed. "Remember the emergency plan Dad taught us when we were kids? After Mom's car got broken into? The coffee shop on DuPont Circle, 20 minutes. Come in through the back entrance, the one by the bookstore. And Sarah, if I'm not there in 30 minutes, Call Agent Rebecca Martinez at the FBI. Tell her everything. How do you know an FBI agent? I don't, but Blackstone mentioned her in his files. I think she's already investigating this. Marcus hoped he was right. The FBI contact was a guess based on a single document he'd photographed, but it was the only official name he'd seen connected to the Malaysia investigation. The SUV was getting closer, weaving through the sparse 3M traffic with the confidence of someone who didn't care about traffic laws. Marcus pressed harder on the accelerator, his Honda straining to maintain speed. 30 minutes, he repeated to Sarah. If I'm not there. The rear window exploded. Marcus ducked instinctively as safety glass showered the interior of his car. In the mirror, he could see the SUV's passenger window down, a gun barrel protruding from it. Marcus, I'm okay. He lied, swerving into the left lane as another shot shattered his passenger mirror. 20 minutes, Sarah. Back entrance. He ended the call and focused on driving. The Honda wasn't built for high-speed pursuits, but Marcus had one advantage. He knew these streets. 3 years of driving to and from the night shift had taught him every shortcut, every back alley, every way to disappear in the maze of DC neighborhoods. Marcus took a sharp left onto a residential street, tires squealing. The SUV followed, but had to slow down to make the turn, giving Marcus a few precious seconds. He killed his headlights and took the next right, then another left, weaving through a neighborhood of row houses and narrow streets. For a moment, he thought he'd lost them. Then the SUV appeared in his mirror again, closing fast. They fired again, this time hitting his rear bumper. The Honda shuddered but kept moving. Marcus realized they weren't trying to kill him, not yet. They wanted him alive, probably to find out what he'd done with the evidence. That gave him an idea. Marcus pulled out his phone and, driving one-handed, sent a mass email to every contact in his address book family. Friends, former classmates, even his dentist. The email contained 3 attachments, the most damning photos from Blackstone's files, a brief explanation of what they showed, and instructions to forward the information to news outlets if anything happened to him or Sarah. It wasn't perfect. Most people wouldn't check their email until morning, but it was insurance. The SUV rammed his bumper, sending the Honda skidding across the center line. Marcus fought to regain control, his tires screaming against the asphalt. He was running out of time and options. Ahead, he saw the lights of a 24-hour gas station. Marcus made a desperate decision. He floored the accelerator and aimed the Honda directly at the station's front window. At the last second, he threw himself sideways across the front seats as the car crashed through the plate glass in an explosion of noise and debris. The Honda came to rest against a rack of snack foods, its engine smoking, but Marcus miraculously unhurt. The night clerk, a young man with wide eyes and an even wider mouth, stood frozen behind the counter. "Call 911. Marcus shouted, climbing out through the passenger window. "Tell them there are men with guns." The SUV had stopped in the street, its occupants clearly visible now. Viktor sat in the passenger seat, a bandage over his temple, talking rapidly into a phone. The driver was a younger man with dead eyes and military bearing. They could have followed Marcus into the store, but that would mean witnesses, cameras, police involvement. Instead, Viktor gestured to his driver, and the SUV sped away into the night. Marcus helped the shaken clerk call 911, then slipped out the back door while the young man was talking to the dispatcher. By the time the police arrived, Marcus was 3 blocks away, jogging through back alleys toward DuPont Circle. He reached the coffee shop, a 24-hour place popular with insomniacs and shift workers, 18 minutes after the call. Sarah was already there, huddled in a corner booth with her back to the wall, scanning every face that came through the door. She looked up as Marcus approached, and her expression cycled through relief, anger, and terror in the space of a heartbeat. "You look like hell. she said as he slid into the booth across from her. Marcus caught his reflection in the coffee shop's window, blood from a cut on his forehead, glass in his hair, clothes torn from his escape through the Honda's window. You should see the other guy. This isn't a joke, Marcus. When I heard that gunshot over the phone, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to get caught up in this. Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. We're family. We're already caught up in each other's lives, for better or worse. Marcus squeezed her hand, then pulled out his phone and showed her the photos he'd taken in Blackstone's vault. Sarah studied them with a reporter's trained eye, her expression growing darker with each image. Jesus, she whispered. $40 million. And these casualty reports. Civilians killed in attacks he organized, Marcus confirmed. Women, children, aid workers. Also, he could steal money meant to save lives. This is enough to bring him down, Sarah said. Multiple federal crimes, conspiracy, murder. If we can get this to the right people, we will. But first we need to make sure we live long enough to testify. As if summoned by his words, Marcus saw a familiar black SUV pull up across the street from the coffee shop. Through the window, he could see Viktor talking on his phone while scanning the building. Back exit, Marcus said quietly. Now. They slipped out through the coffee shop's rear door, which led into an alley connecting to the bookstore Sarah had mentioned. But as they emerged onto the main street, Marcus realized their mistake. There were two SUVs now. Viktor's team had circled the block. This way, Sarah said, pulling Marcus toward the metro station. The trains don't run this late, but we can lose them in the tunnels. They ran hand in hand through the empty streets, two siblings against an organization with unlimited resources and no moral boundaries. Behind them, Marcus heard car doors slamming and the sound of pursuit on foot. As they reached the metro entrance, Marcus made a decision that surprised even him. Sarah, I need you to take the evidence and run. Get it to Agent Martinez, to your editor, to anyone who'll listen. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. Marcus pulled the SD card from his phone. Backup storage where he'd saved the vault photos. This is bigger than both of us now. Those people die for nothing if we don't expose the truth. Sarah took the card, but her eyes were fierce. What are you going to do? Marcus looked back at the approaching figures, Viktor and his partner, moving with professional efficiency through the night. I'm going to buy you time. The tension is building. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. Marcus stood at the top of the metro escalators as Sarah disappeared into the tunnels below. Viktor and his partner were 50 yards away, moving fast but trying to stay inconspicuous in case any late-night pedestrians were watching. Marcus had never been in a fight in his life. 3 years of night shifts had kept him in decent shape. But he was about to face trained killers with nothing but desperation and the element of surprise. He chose surprise. Instead of running, Marcus walked directly toward Viktor and his partner. The move was so unexpected that both men hesitated, hands moving toward concealed weapons, but not drawing them on the open street. Mr. Chen, Viktor said when they were 10 feet apart. His accent was more pronounced now, stress bleeding through his professional control. You've caused quite a disturbance tonight. Just getting started, Marcus replied, amazed at how calm he sounded. Viktor's partner, the younger man with dead eyes, shifted position to flank Marcus. These were predators, and they were moving into formation for a kill. Where is your sister? Viktor asked. Safe, far away from here. I don't think so. Viktor smiled, that same cold expression Marcus had seen in the vault. We've been tracking her phone. She's in the metro tunnels below us, probably trying to reach the other side of the station. Marcus felt his heart sink. Of course they'd been tracking Sarah's phone. These people had resources he couldn't imagine. Here's what's going to happen, Viktor continued. You're going to call her up here. All three of us will take a ride together, somewhere private where we can discuss the return of Mr. Blackstone's property. And if I refuse? Viktor nodded to his partner, who pulled out a tablet and showed Marcus the screen. It was another live video feed, this one from inside the metro tunnels. Sarah was visible, moving carefully through the shadows, unaware she was being watched. My colleagues are already in position, Viktor explained. Trained operatives with orders to eliminate any threats to our operation. Your sister is currently classified as a threat. Marcus stared at the screen, watching Sarah navigate the tunnel system he'd hoped would keep her safe. She was walking into a trap, and it was his fault. What do you want? Marcus asked. The evidence you stole, all of it. Photos, documents, copies, everything. And then? Viktor's smile widened. Then you and your sister disappear. Permanently. Marcus looked at the tablet again, then at Viktor, then at the younger operative who was clearly eager to end this conversation with violence. 3 years of being invisible had taught Marcus to read people, to notice details others missed. And what he noticed now was that Viktor was nervous. The blood on his bandage was fresh. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline and possibly a concussion. The attack in the vault had hurt him more than he was letting on. More. Importantly, they were standing on a public street, under surveillance cameras, with potential witnesses. These men were professionals, but they were also operating outside their comfort zone. Corporate espionage and intimidation were their expertise. Not open warfare in downtown D.C., Marcus made his second desperate decision of the night. Okay, he said, pulling out his phone. I'll call Sarah. Viktor nodded approvingly, but Marcus wasn't calling his sister. Instead, he opened his camera app and hit record, pointing the phone directly at Viktor's face. My name is Marcus Chen, he said, loudly, his voice carrying across the empty street. These men work for Jonathan Blackstone, CEO of Blackstone Industries. They're threatening to kill me and my sister because we discovered evidence of Blackstone's crimes in Malaysia. Viktor lunged forward, but Marcus was already moving, backing toward the intersection where street cameras would capture everything. Blackstone stole $40 million in humanitarian aid, Marcus continued, still filming. He hired militias to attack aid convoys, killing civilians so he could steal money meant to save lives. The younger operative drew his gun, but Viktor hissed something in Russian that made him hesitate. Too many cameras, too many potential witnesses, too much exposure. The evidence is already uploaded to the cloud, Marcus lied smoothly, improvising as he backed further into the intersection. Killing us won't stop the story from coming out. Viktor's face was flushed with rage and frustration. You have no idea what you're dealing with, boy. Mr. Blackstone has connections you can't imagine. Senators, judges, federal agents. Even if your story comes out, it will be discredited within hours. Maybe, Marcus admitted, but it will still come out. And people will see this video of you threatening to murder civilians. Viktor seemed to realize he'd been outmaneuvered. In trying to intimidate Marcus, he'd given him exactly the kind of confession that would be devastating if made public. Delete that recording, Viktor demanded. Sure, Marcus said. Right after you call off your people in the tunnels. For a moment, the three men stood in the intersection like gunfighters in an old western. Then Viktor pulled out his own phone and spoke. Rapid Russian into it. On the tablet, Marcus watched the operatives in the tunnel system pull back from Sarah's position. It's done, Viktor said. Now delete the recording. Marcus pretended to fiddle with his phone, but instead of deleting the video, he uploaded it to every social media platform he could think of. The upload bars crawled across his screen as he stalled for time. You know, Marcus said conversationally, I've been thinking about what you said. About Blackstone having powerful friends. Viktor raised an eyebrow, probably wondering why his hostage had suddenly become chatty. The thing is, Marcus continued, watching the upload progress, powerful people don't like being associated with failure. And right now Blackstone's operation is falling apart. What are you talking about? I sent the evidence to dozens of people before I came here tonight. Reporters, federal agents, government watchdog groups. By morning, this story will be everywhere. Senator Morrison will have everything he needs to launch a full investigation. Viktor's expression darkened. You're bluffing. Maybe, but ask yourself this. When Blackstone realizes his secrets are public, what do you think he'll do to the people who failed to contain the situation? For the first time since their confrontation began, Viktor looked uncertain. Marcus pressed his advantage. Men like Blackstone don't accept failure, they eliminate it. And right now, you and your partner represent a very public, very messy failure. The upload finished. Marcus's video, Viktor's threats, his admission of Blackstone's crimes, his own identity was now spreading across the internet faster than any corporate damage control team could contain it. It's too late, Marcus said simply. The story's out there. Killing us now would just make it worse. Viktor stared at him for a long moment, then spoke into his phone again. This time, Marcus caught enough of the Russian to understand. They were calling for extraction. This isn't over, Viktor said as a new SUV pulled up to the curb. Double quotes, yes, it is, Marcus replied. You just don't know it yet. Viktor and his partner climbed into the SUV and disappeared into the night, leaving Marcus alone under the streetlights. He stood there for a moment, hardly believing he was still alive, then ran toward the metro entrance to find Sarah. He found her emerging from a service tunnel, looking shaken but unharmed. Marcus, I saw men down there, but they just left. What happened? Marcus showed her his phone, where notifications were already pouring in from his viral video. I think, he said, we just won. But even as he said it, Marcus knew the real battle was just beginning. By dawn, Marcus's video had been viewed 2 million times. He and Sarah sat in an FBI safe house in Virginia, watching their story explode across every news channel. Agent Rebecca Martinez, who turned out to be exactly who Marcus had hoped, paced the room while coordinating with federal prosecutors, international investigators, and congressional oversight committees. This is unprecedented, Agent Martinez sighed, hanging up from yet another call. We've had teams working the Malaysia case for months, but we couldn't get close to the financial records. What you two uncovered in one night. She gestured at the evidence spread across the conference table, printed copies of every document Marcus had photographed. Financial records showing the money trail, casualty reports from the staged attacks. Blackstone's already lawyered up. She continued. Claims the documents are fabricated, says Marcus is a disgruntled employee seeking revenge. But the Swiss banks are cooperating with our investigation, and the digital forensics on your photos prove they're authentic. Sarah looked up from her laptop, where she was monitoring social media responses to their story. The Washington Herald is running a full expose in tomorrow's edition. 3 other major newspapers are preparing their own investigations. Someone leaked additional documents, financial records that corroborate everything Marcus found. Who? Marcus asked. Anonymous source, Sarah replied. But whoever it is has access to Blackstone's corporate banking records. Internal financial documents that even you didn't see. Agent Martinez's phone rang again. She answered it, spoke briefly, then turned to them with a grim expression. Viktor Kozlov, the man who threatened you, was found dead in his hotel room an hour ago. Apparent suicide, single gunshot to the head. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Suicide? That's what it looks like. But Viktor was a former Spetsnaz operative, not the type to take his own life. More likely, Blackstone is cleaning house. Sarah closed her laptop. If he's willing to kill his own people to contain this, what's he planning for us? That's why you're here, Agent Martinez assured them. Federal protection until we can get indictments and make arrests. But I'll be honest, Blackstone has resources and connections that make this dangerous for everyone involved. As if summoned by her words, Agent Martinez's phone buzzed with a text message. She read it, and her expression hardened. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "Senator Morrison. He's calling for an emergency session of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Wants a full investigation into the Malaysia aid program and any connections to domestic corruption." That's good news, right? It should be, but Morrison just received a package at his office. Photos of his family, his home address, his children's school schedules. The message was clear: back off or face consequences. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the suburban safe house neighborhood. Somewhere out there, one of the most powerful men in the country was orchestrating a campaign to destroy anyone who threatened his empire. "There's something else," Agent Martinez continued. "The anonymous source who leaked those additional documents. They want to meet." Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. "Who is it?" "Someone inside Blackstone Industries. High-level access, intimate knowledge of the company's illegal operations. They claim to have evidence that makes what you found look like the tip of the iceberg." "Could be a trap," Sarah pointed out. "Could be," Agent Martinez agreed. "But they've already provided information that checks out. Financial records showing similar operations in 3 other countries, a network of shell companies used to launder stolen aid money, communications with government officials who've been helping cover up the crimes." Marcus turned back from the window. "Where do they want to meet?" "Meridian Tower. Tonight. They say it's the only place they can access the evidence without being detected." "That's insane," Sarah said. "After what happened last night, that building is probably crawling with Blackstone security." "Which is exactly why our source thinks it's safe," Agent Martinez explained. "Blackstone can't afford to have federal agents murdered in his own building. Too much exposure, too many questions." Marcus felt a familiar sensation, the same mix of terror and determination that had driven him to break into the vault. "What do they want from us?" "They want you there, Marcus. Specifically you. They say you're the only person who can help them access what they need." "Why me?" Agent Martinez smiled grimly. "Because you're a janitor. You have access to every floor, every office, every secure area in that building. And after last night, you're probably the only person Blackstone doesn't suspect of being an inside source." Marcus looked at Sarah, then at Agent Martinez, then at the evidence scattered across the table. Proof of crimes that had killed dozens of innocent people and stolen millions meant to save lives. "When do we go?" "Marcus, no," Sarah said immediately. "It's too dangerous. You've done enough." "She's right," Agent Martinez agreed. "This is FBI business now. We can handle it from here." But Marcus was already shaking his head. "You said it yourself. You've been investigating for months without getting close to the evidence." "I got more in one night than your whole team managed." "In all that time, because you got lucky," Sarah protested. "And because they weren't expecting it. Tonight will be different." Marcus sat back down at the table and looked at the photos he'd taken in Blackstone's vault. Images of dead civilians, stolen money, corrupted officials. People who would never get justice unless someone was willing to take risks. "I became invisible 3 years ago," he said quietly. "Stopped fighting, stopped trying to change anything. Just cleaned other people's messes and collected my paycheck. But last night, I remembered something I'd forgotten." He looked up at Sarah, then at Agent Martinez. "Sometimes being invisible is exactly what you need to see clearly. And sometimes the only way to help people is to stop being invisible yourself." Agent Martinez studied him for a long moment. "If we do this, it will be a federal operation. Full surveillance, backup teams, extraction plans. You go in wired for sound and video, with agents positioned throughout the building. And if it's a trap, then we'll be ready for that too." Sarah grabbed Marcus's hand. I'm going with you. Absolutely not, Agent Martinez said. I'm an investigative reporter. This is the story of the decade, maybe the century. You think I'm sitting in a safe house while my brother risks his life to expose it? Marcus squeezed his sister's hand. Together? Together. Agent Martinez looked at both of them, a janitor and a reporter who had declared war on one of the most powerful corporations in America and made a decision that would change all their lives. Okay, she said, but we do this my way. Full federal operation, complete surveillance, and at the first sign of trouble, we extract you both. Marcus nodded, already thinking about the building he knew better than anywhere else in the world. Somewhere in Meridian Tower was evidence that could bring down an empire built on blood and stolen money. Tonight, he was going back to finish what? He started at 11 p.m. Marcus badged into Meridian Tower for what he suspected would be the last time. The lobby felt different now, threatening instead of familiar. Shadows hiding potential enemies instead of empty corners waiting to be cleaned. Rodriguez was at the front desk as usual, but his greeting seemed forced. Back for another shift, Marcus? Thought you might take a day off after that car accident. Marcus had almost forgotten about the Honda's spectacular crash through the gas station window. Can't afford to miss work, he replied, hoping his voice sounded normal. Agent Martinez's voice crackled in his nearly invisible earpiece. Audio clear. Video feed from your glasses is good. Backup teams are in position. The glasses were another piece of FBI tech identical to Marcus's regular frames, but equipped with a micro camera and transmitter. The bureau had assets positioned throughout the building. Agents posing as maintenance workers in the basement, a team in the building across the street, and 2 operatives in the parking garage. Sarah was in the FBI command vehicle 3 blocks away, monitoring everything and ready to coordinate media response if the operation went public. Marcus took the service elevator to the 38th floor, following the same route he'd used the night before. But this time, instead of heading to Blackstone's office, he went to the location specified by their mysterious contact, the building's central server room. The server room was one of the few areas Marcus rarely cleaned too much sensitive equipment, too many restrictions on access. But his maintenance keycard worked, and he stepped into a chamber filled with humming servers and blinking lights. You came. Marcus spun around to find a woman emerging from behind a rack of servers. She was about 40, well-dressed in the kind of expensive suit that marked her as executive level. Her face was familiar, but it took Marcus a moment to place her. Mrs. Henderson, he said finally. Blackstone's secretary. Executive assistant, she corrected automatically, then smiled grimly. Though after tonight, I'll probably be unemployed. Margaret. Henderson had worked for Blackstone for 8 years. Marcus had seen her hundreds of times during his cleaning rounds, always professional, always efficient, always completely invisible to him in the way that support staff were invisible to each other. You're the inside source, Marcus said. I've been documenting Jonathan's crimes for 2 years, she replied. Ever since I accidentally discovered the Malaysia operation while organizing his files. She gestured to a laptop connected to one of the servers. Everything's here. Financial records going back 5 years. Communications with foreign operatives. Payment schedules for bribes and assassinations. Jonathan thinks his private server is secure, but he gave me administrative access to manage his digital files. Agent. Martinez's voice in Marcus's ear. This is incredible. We're recording everything. Mrs. Henderson's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up file after file of incriminating evidence. Malaysia was just the beginning. There's been similar operations in Somalia, Yemen, and Haiti. Hundreds of millions in aid money stolen, thousands of civilians killed. Marcus stared at the screen, watching a network of corruption that spanned continents. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I was terrified, she admitted. Jonathan has killed people for less than what I know. But after your video went viral, after seeing what you and your sister were willing to risk, she gestured helplessly. I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. We need to download everything, Marcus said. Get it to the FBI before. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing the server room in an eerie red glow. The servers continued humming, but Mrs. Henderson's laptop screen went black. Building-wide power outage. Agent Martinez's voice crackled through static. Backup generators should restore power in 60 seconds. But Marcus knew it wasn't an accident. Through the server room's small window, he could see lights in the buildings across the street. The power cut was isolated to Meridian Tower. No, Mrs. Henderson whispered as if summoned by her words. They heard the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside. Heavy boots, multiple people, moving with military precision. FBI team, report status. Agent Martinez commanded through the earpiece. Static. Then, command, this is the basement team. We have a problem. Building security just locked down all elevators and stairwells. We're trapped. More static than another. Voice, Parking team to command. Armed hostiles moving into the building. We count at least a dozen. Marcus realized they'd walked into a trap. Blackstone had known about Mrs. Henderson all along, and had been waiting for her to make contact with outside authorities. The power outage, the security lockdown, it was all planned. Can you bypass the security systems? Marcus asked Mrs. Henderson. Not from here. I'd need access to the main security office on the 20th floor. The footsteps were getting closer. Marcus looked around the server room, calculating options. There was only one exit, and it led directly into the hallway where their enemies were approaching. Then he noticed something that made him smile. Mrs. Henderson, do you know why they chose this room for the meeting? Because it's secure? Hard to access? Because it's connected to every floor in the building, Marcus replied, pointing to the ventilation grate near the ceiling. Air conditioning, power cables, data lines. Everything runs through the utility passages behind these walls. Mrs. Henderson stared at him. You want us to crawl through the air ducts? I want us to disappear, Marcus corrected. Just like I've been doing for 3 years. Agent Martinez's voice cut through the static. Marcus, we're working on extraction. But it's going to take time. Building security has been compromised. Someone's helping Blackstone's people from the inside. Marcus was already moving, pulling his screwdriver set from his maintenance belt. The ventilation grate came off easily, revealing a passage just wide enough for a person to crawl through. Download everything you can to a portable drive, he told Mrs. Henderson while she worked frantically at her laptop. We'll take it with us. The footsteps stopped outside the server room door. Marcus heard low voices, then the sound of keycards being tried against the electronic lock. Mrs. Henderson ejected a USB drive from her laptop and handed it to Marcus. 2 terabytes of evidence, she whispered. Everything. The door's electronic lock beeped, and Marcus heard it starting to open. Go, he whispered, boosting Mrs. Henderson up into the ventilation shaft. She disappeared into the darkness, and Marcus pulled himself up after her just as the door swung wide. Below them, armed men swept into the server room with tactical precision. Marcus held his breath as one of them examined Mrs. Henderson's laptop, which was still warm from use. They were just here, a voice said. Check the other exits. Marcus and Mrs. Henderson crawled through the ventilation system, moving as quietly as possible through passages that connected every floor of the building. Marcus had explored these routes during his first year on the job, memorizing the layout in case he ever needed to reach blocked areas for maintenance. Now, that knowledge was keeping them alive. Where are we going? Mrs. Henderson whispered. The 20th floor, Marcus replied. You said you could access the security systems from there? Yes, but that's where Blackstone's office is. If they're looking for us, they'll expect us to run away from the danger, not toward it, Marcus said. Sometimes the safest place is right in the middle of the storm. They crawled in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. The ventilation system carried sounds from throughout the building, shouting voices, slamming doors, the sound of systematic searches being conducted on multiple floors. Finally, they reached the 20th floor access point. Marcus carefully removed the grate and peered into an empty hallway. The executive level was dark except for emergency lighting, but Marcus could see that some offices had lights on behind closed doors. "Security office is down the hall," Mrs. Henderson whispered as they dropped silently to the carpeted floor. They moved like ghosts through the darkened hallway, using Marcus's knowledge of camera blind spots and Mrs. Henderson's keycard access to navigate the executive level. The security office door was locked, but Marcus's lockpicking skills had improved considerably in the past 24 hours. Inside, Mrs. Henderson went to work on the security computer while Marcus watched the door. "I can restore elevator access," she said, fingers flying across the keyboard. "And I can unlock the stairwells. But once I do this, they'll know exactly where we are." "Do it," Marcus said. "Our people need a way out." Mrs. Henderson hit enter, and throughout the building, Marcus heard the sound of elevators restarting and electronic locks disengaging. Agent Martinez's voice crackled back to life in his earpiece. "Elevators are active. All teams begin extraction procedures." But their victory was short-lived. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside the security office, moving fast and getting closer. "They're coming," Marcus said. Mrs. Henderson pulled another USB drive from the security computer. "Building surveillance footage from the past 6 months," she explained. "Proof of Viktor's visits, meetings with government officials, everything." The footsteps stopped outside their door. Marcus looked around the security office, searching for escape routes. There were no windows, no ventilation grates large enough to crawl through, no convenient hiding places. "Mrs. Henderson," he said quietly, "I need you to do exactly what I tell you." The door handle turned. "Get under the desk," Marcus whispered to Mrs. Henderson. "No matter what happens, don't come out until the FBI gets here." She clutched both USB drives to her chest and squeezed into the space beneath the security desk. Just as the door burst open, 6 men entered the office, led by someone Marcus had never seen before, a tall, thin man with silver hair and the kind of expensive suit that marked him as Blackstone's inner circle. "Mr. Chen," the man said in a cultured accent that might have been British. "I'm Thomas Ashford, head of corporate security for Blackstone Industries. We need to have a conversation." Marcus stood with his hands visible, calculating distances to potential weapons, a heavy stapler, a desk lamp, a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. "About what?" "About the unfortunate misunderstanding that occurred last night. Mr. Blackstone is prepared to offer you and your sister a very generous compensation package in exchange for your discretion." "Discretion?" Ashford smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "A retraction of your accusations. An acknowledgement that you may have misinterpreted certain documents. These corporate matters can be quite complex for someone without proper context." Marcus laughed, surprising himself. "You mean someone without a business degree? Someone who's just a janitor?" "I mean no disrespect to your profession," Ashford replied smoothly. "But industrial espionage is a serious crime. Breaking into executive offices, stealing confidential documents, these actions carry significant prison sentences. Not as significant as the sentences for murder and theft of humanitarian aid." Ashford's smile faltered slightly. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're referring to. The Malaysia operation. 40 million in stolen aid money. Civilians killed in staged attacks." Marcus gestured to the security monitors, which were still displaying feeds from throughout the building. "All documented in your boss's personal files." "Documents can be fabricated," Ashford said, "especially by someone seeking revenge against a former employer." "Former?" Oh yes, Mr. Chen. Your employment with Blackstone Industries was terminated. This morning. Theft of company property, you understand. Agent Martinez's voice crackled in Marcus's earpiece. Extraction teams are moving. Hold your position. But Marcus could see on the security monitors that Blackstone's people were positioned throughout the building. The FBI teams would face armed resistance at every floor. I have a counter-offer, Marcus said to Ashford. Oh? Let me walk out of here with the evidence, and I'll make sure your boss gets a fair trial instead of whatever the families of his victims might have planned. Ashford's expression hardened. I'm afraid that's not acceptable. One of his men stepped forward, the younger operative who had been with Viktor the night before. His eyes held the same dead quality Marcus remembered, and his hand rested on a concealed weapon. You killed Viktor, Marcus said. Viktor made mistakes, Ashford replied. Allowed emotions to compromise operational security. We don't repeat such errors. Is that what you're going to tell Blackstone when you fail to contain this story? That you don't make mistakes? For the first time, Ashford looked uncertain. The story is already contained. Social media posts can be deleted, news outlets can be pressured, federal investigations can be redirected. What about the Swiss banks? They're already cooperating with federal investigators. Swiss bankers understand discretion when properly motivated. Marcus glanced at the security monitors again. FBI teams were making progress, but slowly, too slowly. There's one thing you haven't considered, Marcus said. What's that? I uploaded everything to WikiLeaks before I came here tonight. It was a lie, but Ashford couldn't know that. The older man's face went pale. You're bluffing. Maybe, but in about 6 hours when WikiLeaks releases its latest document dump, we'll find out together. Marcus watched Ashford process this information. Even if it was a bluff, the possibility of a WikiLeaks release would terrify Blackstone and his organization. That kind of exposure couldn't be bought off or intimidated into silence. Check his story, Ashford ordered one of his men, who immediately began working on a laptop. While they were distracted, Marcus caught movement on one of the security monitors. FBI agents in tactical gear were moving through the stairwells, getting closer to the 20th floor. Sir, the man with the laptop said, there's chatter on hacker forums about a major document release scheduled for dawn. Could be coincidence. But ... Ashford's composure cracked completely. Call Mr. Blackstone. Tell him we may have a WikiLeaks problem. The younger operative stepped closer to Marcus, his hand now openly resting on his gun. Want me to end this? Not yet, Ashford said. But Marcus could see him wavering. Agent Martinez's voice in his earpiece. 30 seconds out. Get down. Marcus looked at the security monitors one more time. Then at Mrs. Henderson's hiding place beneath the desk. Then at the 6 armed men who were about to kill him to protect their boss's empire. He made a decision that would have seemed impossible 3 days ago. Marcus grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall and pulled the pin. The room filled with white powder as Marcus sprayed the extinguisher in a wide arc, blinding everyone temporarily. He dove behind the security desk just as gunfire erupted, bullets shattering monitors and punching holes in the walls. FBI, federal agents. The office door exploded inward as tactical agents stormed the room. Marcus heard shouting, more gunfire, and the sounds of a brief but violent struggle. When the shooting stopped, Marcus looked up from behind the desk to find Agent Martinez standing over Ashford's unconscious form. You okay? She asked. Marcus helped Mrs. Henderson emerge from her hiding place. She was shaken but unhurt, still clutching the USB drives. We got them, she whispered, staring at the evidence in her hands. We actually got them. Agent Martinez secured the drives while her team cuffed the survivors of Blackstone's security force. Thomas Ashford, she announced as they dragged him away. You're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, and violation of federal RICO statutes. Marcus walked to the shattered windows, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Jonathan Blackstone was probably learning that his empire was collapsing. "It's over," Agent Martinez said, joining him at the window. "Is it?" Marcus asked. "Men like Blackstone don't go down easy. This one will. Between your evidence and Mrs. Henderson's files, we have enough to prosecute the entire organization. Swiss banks are freezing accounts, international warrants are being issued, and 3 senators are calling for congressional hearings." Marcus nodded, but something nagged at him. "What about Blackstone himself? Where is he?" Agent Martinez frowned and spoke into her radio. After a brief conversation, she turned back to Marcus with a grim expression. "Jonathan Blackstone's private jet took off from Dulles 2 hours ago. Flight plan filed for a country with no extradition treaty." Marcus felt his heart sink. After everything they'd sacrificed, everything they'd risked, the man responsible for it all was going to escape. "We'll get him," Agent Martinez assured him. "It may take time, but we'll get him." But Marcus was already thinking about something else. Something Blackstone had said in that overheard conversation 2 nights ago. As long as those documents exist, certain parties will ensure this story never sees daylight. "Agent Martinez," Marcus said slowly, "what if Blackstone isn't running away? What if he's going to get something?" "What do you mean?" Marcus turned from the window, his mind racing. He mentioned insurance, documents that would guarantee his protection. What if there are more files we haven't found? Before Agent Martinez could respond, her radio crackled with an urgent message. "Command, this is air traffic control. Blackstone's jet just changed course. New destination, Switzerland." Marcus and Agent Martinez looked at each other, understanding passing between them. "The bank accounts," she said. "The insurance files," Marcus agreed. Jonathan Blackstone wasn't running away. He was going to collect his leverage, whatever evidence he'd been holding over the heads of the powerful people who'd been protecting him. "Can we stop him?" Marcus asked. Agent Martinez was already coordinating with her team. "We can try. But first, we need to figure out what he's after." Marcus looked at Mrs. Henderson, who was being interviewed by federal agents. "Ask her about Switzerland. Ask her what Blackstone keeps in those Swiss accounts besides money." As Agent Martinez went to question Mrs. Henderson, Marcus remained at the window, watching the city wake up to a new day. The immediate danger was over, but he sensed that the real battle, the one that would determine whether justice was truly served, was just beginning. Somewhere over the Atlantic, Jonathan Blackstone was flying toward what he thought was salvation. Marcus intended to make sure it became his final destination. 3 days later, Marcus found himself in an FBI briefing room in Geneva, Switzerland, staring at surveillance photos of Jonathan Blackstone entering the headquarters of Banque Privée Suisse. "He's been in there for 6 hours," Agent Martinez explained to the international task force assembled around the conference table. Representatives from the FBI, Swiss Federal Police, Interpol, and the U.S. State Department filled the room. Mrs. Henderson, who had become the prosecution's star witness, pointed to architectural plans of the bank building. "Jonathan maintains a private vault in the sub-basement. Not just money documents, photographs, recordings. He called it his retirement insurance." "Insurance against whom?" asked Inspector Claude Dubois of the Swiss Federal Police. "Everyone," Mrs. Henderson replied grimly. "Senators who took bribes, federal judges who fixed cases, CIA agents who facilitated overseas operations. 20 years of dirt on some of the most powerful people in American politics." Marcus studied the bank building through the briefing room window. "He's not just hiding evidence, he's preparing to use it." Agent Martinez nodded. "Our intelligence suggests Blackstone has been reaching out to media outlets, threatening to release everything unless charges are dropped and investigations terminated. Mutually assured destruction," Marcus murmured. Exactly. He destroys himself, but he takes half of Washington with him. Inspector Dubois cleared his throat. The Swiss government is prepared to freeze his accounts and detain Mr. Blackstone, but we need probable cause for search warrants. Without evidence of crimes committed on Swiss soil. We have evidence. Mrs. Henderson interrupted. She placed a USB drive on the table. Financial records showing money laundering through Swiss banks. Proof that Blackstone used his accounts here to fund illegal operations in multiple countries. That should be enough for warrants, Dubois agreed. But executing them will be complex. And Privy Suisse caters to clients who value discretion above all else. Their security systems are formidable. Marcus had been thinking about this problem since they'd arrived in Geneva. What if we don't need to break into the bank? Everyone turned to look at him. What if we get Blackstone to come out instead? Agent Martinez frowned. How? By giving him something he wants more than his insurance policy. Marcus turned to Mrs. Henderson. The Malaysia files you downloaded, they show the complete money trail, right? Every account, every transaction? Yes, but what if some of that money went missing? Not the accounts we already know about, but secondary transfers. Money that Blackstone thought was safely hidden. Mrs. Henderson's eyes widened as she understood. You want to make him think someone's stealing from him. I want to make him think his partners are stealing from him, Marcus corrected. The people he's been protecting with his insurance policy. If Blackstone believes they're betraying him while he's stuck in Switzerland, he'll be forced to return to protect his interests, Agent Martinez finished. And when he lands on American soil, we arrest him, Inspector Dubois concluded. I like this plan, but can it be executed convincingly? Mrs. Henderson was already working on her laptop. I can create false transaction records, showing money transfers from Blackstone's accounts to Senator Morrison's personal holdings. Make it look like Morrison is embezzling while Blackstone is away. Morrison's clean, Agent Martinez said. He won't cooperate with